Today's lesson is Lesson 14, America Grows Westward. Wild frontiers, endless opportunities for exploration, a growing population in the East, and a spirit of adventure all combine to create a dynamic backdrop for the United States at the close of the 18th century. Americans were ready for the next frontier, and thanks to the Treaty of Paris, there were plenty of space to spread out. Remember, the United States controlled all of the land east of the Mississippi River now. During the 10 years around the turn of the century, 4 new states joined the country, and territory was explored and tamed to welcome the next generation of Americans. Many among the generation were characterized by independence, tenacity, and a love for exploration and adventure. Let's start by getting to know Daniel Boone. He represented this spirit well and became a spirit of the American lore. Daniel Boone's life began commonly enough. He was born to English immigrant parents in Pennsylvania in 1734. The forests and wilderness of eastern Pennsylvania were his classrooms. While he learned to read and write, he never had a formal education. It is said that he got his first rifle when he was 12 years old and became an excellent hunter, supplying much food for his large family, which included 10 other children. There was even a story that tells of him shooting the panthers that charged him. Later on, his marksmanship earned him his gun name, the Tickler, meaning this aim was so good he could shoot a tick off of a bear's nose. Supposedly, he killed his first bear at the age of 14. Countless stories such as these are told of Daniel Boone's life. He came to symbolize the spirit of the American frontier with a little embellishment along the way. When Boone was 20, he moved with his family to North Carolina and joined the militia there. He fought in the French and Indian War and began his legendary squabbles with the indigenous peoples of America. He spent his life in a game of cat and mouse with them, was captured several times, and nearly lost his life in battle more than once. He served in the Revolutionary War as well, fighting mostly against indigenous people in Kentucky, who were allied with the British. He even tried to sign up to fight in the War of the 1812, but he was turned down as he was too old at 78. In 1756, when Boone was 22, he married and settled his young family in North Carolina. Family life didn't tame his wild spirit, and he was often gone hunting and exploratory adventures for long periods. It wasn't all for fun, though. Hunting and trapping animals and selling furs were his livelihood. In 1767, Boone took a trip that would shape the rest of his life. He traveled to Kentucky with a friend and was amazed at the beauty and abundance of the area. He eventually played an important part in forging the Wilderness Road through the Cumberland Gap, a natural pass through the Appalachian Mountains of Tennessee and Kentucky. This was significant in the United States because it allowed settlers to cross the mountains and settle in the land beyond, which was not easily done before. Boone's work on the Wilderness Road, clearing trees and building bridges, earned him the nickname the Great Pathfinder. He later founded a settlement he called Boonesboro. He moved his wife and 10 children there and continued his adventures on the American frontier. He built a fort at Boonesboro, although it was often attacked by Indians who felt their way of life was threatened by the westward expansion of settlers. At one point, they even took Boone's daughter and friends, but his daughter was quickly rescued. This story inspired the classic book, The Last of the Mohegans. Life on the Kentucky frontier was difficult and wild, but Boone would have it no other way. Activity break. A young writer, John Filson, met Daniel Boone and was so taken with his many stories of adventure that he asked he could record some of them in a book he was writing. Boone agreed and began quite famous with the book, The Discovery, Settlement, and Present State of Kentucky, which was published in 1784. Boone's description of the natural beauty of Kentucky is quite powerful. One day I undertook a tour through the country, and the diverse and beauties of nature I met within this charming season expelled every gloomy and vexatious thought. Just at the close of day, the gentle gales retired and left the place to the disposal of a profound calm. Not a breeze shook the most tremendous leaf. I had gained the summit of a commanding ridge, and looking around with astonishing delight, beheld the ample plains, the beauty tracts below. On the other hand, I surveyed the famous river Ohio that rolled in silent dignity, marking the western boundary of Kentucky with inconceivable grandeur. Look up some pictures of the Cumberland Gap to bring the description to life. This piece of God's creation is truly breathtaking. Later in life, Boone moved to different parts of the western frontier. He even served as a representative in the Virginia legislature for a time. His legacy, though, will always be of an adventurer and frontiersman. His tenacity in opening up the territory west of the Appalachian Mountains, as well as his larger-than-life persona, combined to create a legendary outdoorsman and a hero of American expansion. The 15th state, Kentucky, June 1st, 1792. Even before the United States declared independence, there was talk of turning Kentucky into the 14th colony. At that time, it was part of Virginia, but the western side of the Appalachians was difficult to reach, and not as many settlers lived there. Conflict with Indians in the area was commonplace, first with the British and then with the American settlers. Boone's work on the Wilderness Road eased the problem of access, and it became a major thoroughfare for settlers heading over the Cumberland Gap. The population increased quickly, and towns were established, including Boonesboro. This led to more talk of separation from Virginia, and Kentucky was admitted as the 15th state in 1792. It was the first American state located west of the Appalachians. Let's look back now at the first state to be admitted after the original 13, Vermont. The 14th state, Vermont, March 4th, 1791. Vermont got its start as a point of argument between New York and New Hampshire. Both states had land grants proving their claim to the land. The problem was that they both had grants to the same area. Soon after the Declaration of Independence was enacted, the settlers there grew tired of the conflict and decided to do something about it. Their solution? They created Vermont, wrote their own constitution, and became an independent republic, meaning they were their own country. They were characterized by independence and a progressive spirit from the beginning. Their constitution outlined that slavery was illegal in Vermont, the first colony to do this. Public schools would be established, and all men, not just landowners, were given the right to vote. America's new government refused to recognize the Vermont Republic. It didn't want other states getting any ideas about independence, and it knew New York would not look kindly on siding with Vermont. In the minds of the Yorkers, as they were called, Vermont belonged to them. Finally, in 1790, New York and Vermont were able to come to an agreement. Vermont paid $30,000 to New York for the recognition of the borders between the two states. The following year, Vermont joined the United States as the 14th state. The 16th state, Tennessee, June 1st, 1796. The area that is now Tennessee was claimed by North Carolina, but it was given back to the government to pay off debts after the war. Settlers there made an attempt to create a state in 1785, the state of Franklin. They even wrote a constitution and organized a legislature. But the federal government returned the land to North Carolina, and Franklin was never recognized. A few years later, the Southwest Territory helped pave the path to statehood. The second attempt to create a state, this time called Tennessee, was successful. When early English settlers entered the area, which is now Tennessee, they got along well with the Cherokee, the largest Indian group there. They fought alongside one another in the French and Indian War. However, after the Revolution, settlers believed the Cherokee people needed to change their ways and assimilate into American culture. The Cherokee people began to view the settlers as a threat to their way of life. Conflict grew over the next several decades, culminating in the 1830s when the Cherokee people, along with many other indigenous people groups, were forcibly removed from the area and relocated. Did you know that vast portions of land west of the Appalachian Mountains eventually became states but were made into territories? The Northwest and Southwest Territories were organized after the Revolutionary War. Congress organized them in as much the same way as a state, with a governor, legislature, and court. As more settlers headed west to these territories, the areas that had the most people evolved into states. Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, and Wisconsin all started out as part of the Northwest Territory, while the Southwest Territory became Tennessee. The 17th state, Ohio, March 1st, 1803. Like most of the Northwest Territory, settlement in Ohio was marked by conflict between American settlers and Indians. With victory for the United States at the end of the 10-year conflict known as the Northwest Indian Wars, many Americans considered the area safer and more peaceful. The new stability, coupled with the appeal of the rich farmland and opportunity that Ohio offered, caused populations of settlers to grow quickly. The Congress outline for statehood required that a state's population be at least 60,000 before it was admitted. In 1803, Ohio reached the number and became the 17th state. With 4 new states and easier access to the areas west of the Appalachian Mountains, the United States began the 19th century ready to spread its wings. This young country would see incredible growth and even more change in the next century. While discord with the Indian groups, as well as international conflict, will continue, determination, opportunity, and an adventurous spirit led the United States ever westward. Let's talk about it. Henry Knox, the United States Secretary of War under George Washington, was a key figure whose views about the Cherokee people shaped government policy. He believed that the Cherokees should assimilate to the culture of the American settlers. He wanted them to speak English, dress in the same clothing as the settlers, and give up their nomadic hunting and gathering lifestyle to instead take up farming and establish permanent villages. Do you agree with this view? Why or why not? If you'd like, do research as a family on the treatment of the Cherokee by the American government. You could even start with a Trail of Tears. To dig deeper, discuss assimilation as a family and how it relates to the immigration today. This concludes our lesson 14 for today.